Just a formality. Lieutenant Commander Erik Weller tugged at the high collar of his dress uniform, silently cursing the diplomatic branch of the Terran coalition. He hadn't survived the Jovian riots, pirate boarding actions, and 2 orbital evacuations just to end up sweating under alien twin suns for a handshake ceremony that sounded like it came out of a tourist brochure. "Smile, Commander," chirped the junior envoy beside him. "The Tyrelians consider stern expressions a sign of cowardice." Erik forced a grin. "If they think I'm afraid, it's probably because I am. Their matriarchs could break me over their knee." They stood on a circular stone platform carved into the cliffside, overlooking a city of sharp-edged towers and winding rivers. Above them, flags bearing both the Tyrelian crest, a fong-pierced sun, and the Terran star and globe fluttered in the wind. The air tasted like ozone and iron, and the crowd's anticipation buzzed through Erik's bones. A gong sounded. From a ceremonial gate strode a tall figure clad in silver-scaled armor. She towered over everyone, well over 7 feet, and her helmet bore crimson plumage that marked her as high-ranking. The murmurs in the crowd fell silent. "That's her," whispered the envoy. "Commander Tyrelia, the Tyrelian First Blade. She'll conduct the initiation." Erik squared his shoulders. "And I'm supposed to what?" "Repeat a phrase and drink a shot of something blue." The envoy nodded. "Exactly. It's a symbolic rite. Nothing binding. Just their way of sealing trust." Reassured, Erik stepped forward. Tyrelia removed her helmet, revealing bronze-hued skin, angular features, and golden eyes that gleamed like molten metal. Her hair was braided with metal rings, each one etched with battle honors. She looked him up and down, evaluating, measuring. "So, the human," she said in thickly accented standard. "You carry yourself like prey, but your eyes betray the predator. This pleases me." Thanks," Erik managed. She turned and gestured to a ceremonial basin held by 2 armored acolytes. One poured in a thick, shimmering liquid that looked like a blend of mercury and starlight. "You will drink. Speak the oath. An offer touch. Then you are initiated." Erik hesitated only a moment. The entire ceremony had been described as cultural fluff. No contracts, no obligations. Just gesture and goodwill. Like smashing a bottle on a ship hull. He took the ornate goblet, raised it in a mock toast to the crowd, and swallowed the alien brew. It burned like liquid static. His vision blurred briefly before snapping back into clarity. Next, he repeated the strange, throaty words fed into his ear by the universal translator. "By sun, by bone, by breath, I stand united." Tyrelia stepped close. The scent of metal and ozone clung to her armor. She leaned down and touched her forehead to his. Her skin was warm, her breath steady. The gong sounded again. The crowd erupted into cheers. Erik grinned. "Well, that was weird but painless." Then Tyrelia didn't step back. Instead, she placed a firm hand on his shoulder and said, loudly, in perfect English, "You are now mine, husband." The crowd cheered even louder. Erik blinked. "Wait, husband? No, hold on. There must be a—" The envoy stumbled over, white-faced. "Sir, the translator, it glitched. We mistranslated the ritual." "What do you mean, mistranslated?" "It's not just an initiation into diplomacy. It's a marriage ceremony. You just agreed to be your consort." Erik's mouth went dry. "You're telling me I didn't just shake hands. I signed a galactic marriage license?" Tyrelia tilted her head. "You drank the vow. You spoke the union words. You touched foreheads. All is witnessed. You are chosen. You are mine." 2 Tyrelian guards approached to escort him, gently but firmly, toward a waiting ceremonial transport. It gleamed obsidian and was adorned with blood-red banners. "I thought this was just a formality." Erik protested as he was led away. Tyrelia followed behind him, helmet under her arm, a satisfied smile tugging at her lips. "For us it is," she said, and the gates to the fortress of House Tyrelia closed behind him. Wait, this is a what now? Erik Weller had faced down pirates, sabotage, and bureaucrats with egos bigger than asteroid colonies, but nothing compared to the sight of Tyrylia's fortress. It wasn't a building. It was a mountain with armor plating, jagged towers, and roaring fire pits. Creatures like tusked panthers prowled the ramparts, and banners bearing the blood insignia of House Kerala flapped in the high wind. The transport landed in a courtyard the size of a shuttle bay. The metal beneath his boots radiated heat, as if the whole place ran on molten fury. He was not alone. Kerala stood beside him, arms folded, watching him with the expression of a woman who had made a very satisfactory trade deal. Her silver armor gleamed, but now, without her helmet, there was nothing to hide the intensity in her gaze. Erik tried again. Let me get this straight. That initiation was a marriage ceremony. To you. And there's no way to undo it. Kerala's eyes narrowed slightly, but not in anger. More like mild confusion. Undo, she repeated. What is done with honor cannot be undone without shame. Okay, but humans don't. You're not on Earth, she cut in. You stand on Tyrelia. You spoke the words. You drank the vow. The right chose you. I accepted. She gestured toward the fortress. Come. You must meet the mothers. Erik didn't move. The mothers. My matriarchs. You must be introduced. They will want to judge your spine. Erik glanced at the guards flanking the courtyard, all of them armed with polearms the size of motorbikes. Diplomacy, he reminded himself. This is just diplomacy, very, very confusing diplomacy. Lead the way, he muttered. Inside, the fortress was unexpectedly clean. Stark stone walls, ceremonial banners, and elaborate carvings. Everything was symmetrical, purposeful. Tyrelians, it seemed, valued order as much as strength. They passed through a vaulted hall where 5 figures waited. Kerala's mothers were not biological in the human sense. Tyrelian culture was polymaternal. Children raised communally by a group of bonded female warriors, each one contributing legacy, skill, and authority. These matriarchs stood tall and imposing, each more decorated than the last. Kerala bowed deeply. Erik awkwardly copied her. This is Erik, son of no house, Kerala said formally. Now bonded by right, by choice. One of the mothers, her braids thick with platinum rings, stepped forward. He is small, she said bluntly, but the bones look solid, and the eyes do not flinch. Erik smiled weakly. Thanks. Another mother circled him, sniffing the air. His scent is unfamiliar. Chemical, not unpleasant. Kerala's third mother raised an eyebrow. He will need training. And armor. Human skin is soft. Excuse me, Erik said, hands up. I'm right here. I can hear all of this. Kerala stepped beside him. They mean no insult. This is their way of approving. This is approval? She tilted her head. You still do not wish the union? Erik hesitated. The rational part of his brain screamed yes. This was a political nightmare. He wasn't ready to be married, especially to a towering alien warrior who could probably break his ribs by sneezing too close. But another part of him, buried under the sarcasm and panic, was curious. Kerala hadn't treated him like a joke or a prize. She had chosen him, studied humans, learned enough of their language to speak directly, and she was willing to bring him into her house, risking her own political standing. I just didn't expect this, Erik admitted. Back on Earth, marriage is different, slower, usually involves dating, arguments, maybe a dog. Kerala frowned. Dating is ritualized sparring? Sometimes. Emotionally, yes. She nodded solemnly. We can spar. Erik chuckled. I bet you could knock me out cold with a feather. One of the mothers let out a bark-like laugh. He has humor. Good. Humor heals dishonor. Before he could respond, a loud chime echoed through the hall. A guard stormed in and bowed. High Commander, the House of Relkar has issued challenge. They claim your bond is invalid. They demand combat for the consort's right. Kerala's face turned to stone. They insult my claim. They question the right. Erik paled. Wait, what kind of challenge are we talking about? Ritual combat, she said. I must fight to defend you. I didn't even bring a weapon. Kerala smirked. You are the prize. You stand beside me. You do not fight yet. As she turned to don her battle gear, Erik muttered under his breath, Initiation, my ass. Fight or flight or marriage counseling. Erik stood at the edge of the dueling ring, nerves fraying like a wire under tension. The arena had been carved from black volcanic stone, surrounded by shouting, Tyrelian onlookers. Their chants echoed in the open-air amphitheater, guttural and thunderous. Opposite Carola stood her challenger, a Tyrelian named Vraxia, a brutish warrior with gray war paint smeared across her face and 2 scar blades strapped to her back. She was from the house of Relkar, one of the ancient rivals to Karala's family. "This is insane," Erik muttered, arms crossed tightly over his chest. "She's fighting for my hand like I'm the last piece of cake at a wedding banquet." A voice beside him answered. One of Karala's mothers, the smallest and oldest of the group, leaned on a staff carved with sigils. "You misunderstand. She does not fight for you. She fights for the honor of choosing you. That's not better. She fights for what she believes is her right to refuse weakness. You complicate things." "Oh, good," Erik said. "So I'm not just a husband. I'm a political inconvenience." The old mother gave him a rare smile. "Yet Karala fights anyway." Below, Karala raised her arms and let out a war cry that silenced the crowd. Her armor shimmered as energy nodes flared along the plating. The ritual weapons, single-edged war staves, were handed to both combatants. Erik expected chaos. Instead, the fight was precise, disciplined, like a dance between 2 apex predators. Every strike was blocked with calculated speed, every dodge a whisper from death. Karala moved with relentless grace, her golden eyes focused, her every motion backed by centuries of martial tradition. And yet, Vraxia was no less fierce. She matched Karala blow for blow, slamming her backward with a powerful strike that dented her breastplate. The crowd gasped. Erik's hands clenched into fists. This wasn't just about marriage. This was Karala proving she hadn't made a mistake by choosing a human. He hated being the mistake. Karala roared and surged forward. With a sweeping feint and a crushing strike, she disarmed Vraxia, sent her sprawling, and pinned her to the ground with the blade at her throat. The gong sounded. The crowd erupted. It was over. Karala didn't turn to the audience. She turned to Erik. She approached him slowly, sweat streaking down her temple, a thin crack on her pauldron. "You are still mine," she said, voice low and ragged. "No one challenges that now." Erik didn't respond immediately. He looked around the arena, at the warriors who had doubted him, at the alien world he barely understood, at Karala, who had risked everything not just to win him, but to protect the right to have chosen him. "I never asked you to fight," he said. Karala stepped closer. "You would prefer to be taken?" "No," he said, meeting her gaze. "I'd prefer to be understood." A pause. Then Karala nodded. "Come." They left the arena, walking side by side through torchlit halls until they reached a private terrace. The sky above was streaked with twin moons, and the air carried the faint scent of burning stone and alien blossoms. "You should rest," she said, but made no move to leave. "I can't rest," Erik replied. "Not until I figure out what this is." Karala sat on a stone bench and gestured for him to do the same. "Ask." He sat slowly. "Why me?" She considered that for a moment. "Humans are unfinished, but in that there is possibility. You build empires out of chaos. You survive extinction with laughter, and you fight when you should have fallen. I watched your history. I saw you lead your people through fire." "I'm not special," Erik said. "Exactly," she replied, "which makes it more impressive." He chuckled, despite himself. "You have a weird way of flirting." She leaned closer. "It is not flirting. It is fact. If I wished to flirt, I would challenge you to wrestle me for dominance." Erik blinked. "Please don't." A brief silence passed between them. Then he said, "I don't know if I'm ready for all this. Marriage, politics, fighting over me like I'm some gemstone." "You do not have to be ready," she said. "You only have to be willing." He looked at her, really looked at the scars, the strength, the steel softness in her gaze. "I'm not running," he said finally. She nodded. "Then we will walk forward together. The bond beyond blood." Erik stood before a polished obsidian mirror, adjusting the ceremonial collar that itched against his neck. The Tyrelian formal garb, equal parts armor and art, fit snugly, emphasizing presence more than protection. Engraved across the breastplate in fine silver were his new titles: Consort of House Tyrelia and Oathbound of the Flame Right. "I look like a space peacock," he muttered. A voice behind him replied, "Then you will be the most majestic bird at the feast." Tyrelia entered the chamber wearing her own ceremonial armor, black with crimson accents, crowned with the golden mantle of the house matriarch in waiting. It was the first time Erik had seen her without weapons strapped to her side. It didn't make her any less formidable. Erik turned, eyes sweeping over her. "You clean up terrifyingly well." She raised an eyebrow. "You continue this sarcasm. I am unsure whether to find it endearing or disarming." He smiled. "That's the goal. Keep you guessing." Tyrelia approached and adjusted the clasp on his collar. Her touch lingered for a moment longer than necessary, and her eyes softened. "The joining feast is symbolic," she said. "A celebration of alliance, of lineage. But many will still see you as outsider, as fragile, as uncertain." "Are they wrong?" Erik asked, his tone more honest than defensive. She paused. "No, but that is not shameful." A knock at the chamber doors broke the moment. One of Tyrelia's younger siblings, a lean warrior with violet tattoos, entered with a bow. "Matriarchs are assembled. The feast begins." Tyrelia gave a nod, then turned to Erik. "You do not need to say anything. Merely stand by me." "Got it." Stand, smile, avoid starting an interstellar incident. He followed her through a corridor that opened into the grand hall of the fortress. Stone pillars rose like ancient trees, and the ceiling arched high above them, carved with constellations that mimicked Tyrelia's night sky. Dozens of tables filled the chamber, each hosting members of various houses, adorned in their colors, their faces a mix of curiosity and thinly veiled judgment. At the far end, a raised dais held the matriarchs of House Tyrelia and the honored guests. It was here that Tyrelia led Erik, her hand briefly brushing against his as they ascended the steps together. When the two took their places, the room grew silent. One of the matriarchs rose, Tyrelia's third mother, the blunt one who had sniffed Erik when they first met. She struck her staff once against the stone floor. "Tonight, we feast not only for alliance," she said. "We feast because the first blade has chosen." She has invoked the right of bond, and her claim was challenged. It was met with fire. It was held. It was won. A chorus of thumps echoed as Tyrelians pounded their fists on the table in solemn approval. She has taken a consort not from bloodlines, but from stars, not of strength born in our trials, but of endurance forged in his own. He is not Tyrelian, but he is chosen. We drink to that. Goblets were raised. A deep, unified chant filled the hall. Then the music began, stringed instruments with haunting, hollow tones, and the feast was served. Erik leaned in toward Tyrelia. "I think that was the nicest backhanded welcome speech I've ever received." "They approve," she said. "They're hiding it well." Tyrelia chuckled quietly. "This is them being warm." As the night wore on, Erik found himself growing less stiff, more at ease. Warriors approached, some curious, some bold. He answered questions, made awkward jokes, even clinked goblets with a war historian who offered a half-smile in response. But it was when the eldest matriarch approached him that the room once again quieted. "You are not what I expected," she said in a voice like grinding stone. "But perhaps that is the point. Tyrelia has never chosen the expected path." Erik stood, nervous but composed. "I can't promise I'll understand everything, but I'll try, and I don't run from what matters." She stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she extended her hand. "You may yet prove worthy of her." Erik took it. "I like to think I already am." Behind him, Tyrelia's eyes gleamed with something unreadable, but powerful. That night, beneath the twin moons of Tyrelia, Erik Weller, Terran soldier, accidental consort, stood among strangers who were slowly becoming something else. Not family yet, but no longer enemies. And Tyrelia, blade-born and battle-forged, stood beside him, not as his captor, not as his commander, but as his equal.